Hi everyone, so today we're going to be reacting to a video called 5 Reasons Why Eggs Are Bad for You by Roshni Sanghvi. Someone sent me an hour-long video with this person, which is going to be a little bit tricky to react to because it's going to be, I started watching it, it was so much wrong with it that, yeah, it's going to take a long time. So I thought let's react to this 10-minute one and see how it goes.
What's up, you guys? This is Roshni Sanghvi. I'm a plant based sports nutritionist and a body transformation specialist. Today, we are going to talk about top 5 reasons to not include eggs in your diet. Now, I see a lot of people who come to me as new clients and potential clients who've been eating a lot of eggs as suggested by their nutritionists and dietitians, or they would have read
Sounds like their ex-nutritionists and dietitians were sensible people, but okay, let's see.
online. But eggs are actually really bad for you. Very
How? What is the evidence that eggs are bad for us? Humans have been eating eggs for, we don't actually know, but at least tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of years. How could such a food be bad for humans? Like in what context?
very bad for you if you start researching about it. Let's discuss 5 reasons to never include eggs in your diet. Number one, they're very, very high in something called choline.
So choline is actually super important for reversing fatty liver and so on. It's actually definitely a good thing, right?
Now, initially, like a decade or so back, the egg industry actually boasted of this. They said eggs are very high in choline and they're very, very healthy and they're good for you.
That's true. I mean, let me say this. It's not the case that you can say universally that it's true, but it's certainly true for a default person that eggs are not bad for anyone, right? Because again, it's a food that humans have evolved to eat for tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of years.
Choline is required for the body, so that is important. But eggs have choline in abundance, and this is not good because when choline enters the body, your gut microbiome, that is the thousands and thousands of bacteria which live in your stomach, which live in your gut, they start converting this choline into something called TMA. TMA is taken up by the liver and converted into something called TMAO.
And all of this is relevant how? I mean, there may be associational evidence on the negative effects of TMAO, but I mean, for example, something like fish is much higher in TMAO than eggs, I believe, or at least as high. I'll double check the figures and put a link. But all the correlational data shows that fish consumption is healthy, right? So yeah, who cares?
TMO is very harmful for the body, and this came from what? Choline in the eggs. Even
So some of these things are, you can take something that may be harmful in a certain context. So TMAO may be associated with inflammation, may be associated with bad things in a certain context. That doesn't mean that a food providing TMAO is a bad food. For example, it is certainly the case that palmitic acid in excess in the blood, right? This is a specific fatty acid in a specific context in the blood in a fasting state. It is certainly the case that that is not a good thing. From that, does it follow that eating palmitic acid, like eating palm oil, for example, is a bad thing? No, not necessarily. Maybe, but you have to go through more logical steps to prove that. So I hope it's clear the logical fallacy that she's making.
in meat, but in eggs because eggs have abundant amount of choline. TMAO is responsible to reduce your HDL, which is your good cholesterol. It's also associated with heart attacks and heart diseases. It's
Associated being the key word, so we can't really say anything about that.
extremely bad for you. High
But you can't say that. So you can't say that it's extremely bad for people when we have examples of people, myself largely included, who got healthy by eating, when I was unhealthy and getting healthier, 15, 20 eggs a day sometimes, and that's how I recovered, right? So you can't say that it's extremely bad for everyone, for example.
levels of TMO in the body can do a lot of damage. That's one most important reason to not include eggs in your diet. TMA is also the reason for body odor. So people who have a lot of eggs, they smell fun.
That is complete nonsense, right? So you compare how I smelled. This is according to my partner, not me, right? You compare how I smelled as a vegan and a vegetarian, which was pretty god awful, to how I smelled when I'm eating 20 eggs a day, which was basically nothing. My body odor went away. So there may be studies which show excess consumption of something like choline in a supplement form is associated with body odor, but that's not, eggs are a whole food. They come in with many other things in them. So there's no evidence that this is the case.
That's because of the TMAO content. Number two, the most obvious one is cholesterol. Eggs are
Cholesterol is part of every cell. Cholesterol is necessary for life. Cholesterol is a precursor to vitamin D, sex hormones. Cholesterol is essential. So why dietary cholesterol should be a problem? 75 to 80%, maybe more, of the cholesterol in our body is coming from our liver. The liver is producing it directly. When you eat cholesterol in foods, it has to be broken down, and then some of it can be reassembled as cholesterol through a process called reesterification. So why that should be bad, I mean, you have to give me an actual reason. You can't just say eggs are high in cholesterol. If I asked you what's the most important cell in the body, what would you say? Would you say the cardiac cell, the heart cell? Would you say the hepatic cell, the liver cell? Would you say some kind of immune cell? The answer, my friends, is none of these. The answer of the most important cell in the body is stem cells, because they can become any of those things and more. We are born producing stem cells, but unfortunately, as we age, our production of stem cells goes down. Fortunately, there is a way to increase our endogenous production of stem cells even as we get older. To find out more, click the link on your screen.
Very, very high in cholesterol. Your daily cholesterol intake should be about 300 mg. No.
Says who? Says who? What's the evidence for that? All the evidence that I've seen shows that the higher, that A, that cholesterol intake is not particularly relevant, and B, the higher your blood cholesterol, the better off you are as a rule, right?
No more than that. But just one serving of egg has close to 300 mg. That's your daily intake of cholesterol. So if you have like one egg a day, you can't have anything else which is.
So again, there's a case report of a person who was eating 25 to 30 eggs a day, living long time. I think the case report was written when he was in his 80s, and he'd been eating that for years and years and years. This is complete nonsense. There's nothing wrong with taking dietary cholesterol. There's nothing wrong with taking as many eggs per day as you like.
And cholesterol, including oils and meat and dairy and none of those. It's very, very high content of cholesterol. But I remember, doing a workshop sometime back where I was talking about eggs and how bad they are because they're very high in saturated fats and cholesterol. And one of the participants got up and said, no, but the cholesterol coming from eggs is good for you. Where did he even get his research from? That was my first question. Like, how can cholesterol be good?
Cholesterol is a precursor to vitamin D, to all the sex hormones. Cholesterol is part of every cell wall. It's part of the phospholipid bilayer in every cell in your body. So how can cholesterol be bad for you is the question, not be good for you, right?
For you. But the more and more I started digging about it, I found out that, did you know 60% of research done in the egg industry about eggs have been sponsored by egg industry?
So that's a criticism of absolutely every nutrition related research point, right? All the research to do with coffee is funded by coffee. All the research to do with, turmeric is funded by supplement companies, et cetera, et cetera. So if you don't like that, then don't like any of the research. Then you shouldn't like any of the nutrition research, which is a position that would at least be logically consistent. In other words, if you said, I don't accept the egg research and I don't accept any other research, I would say, cool, that's fine. But when you say I don't accept the egg research, but I accept the, fiber research, for example, I know this is someone who likes fiber, I think, then you're just cherry picking. You're saying, I like the data I agree with, but I don't like the data I don't agree with, right? And that's the worst mistake we can make as people who have to be sort of open-minded and critical about our own thinking. We shouldn't make the mistake of just citing the research we agree with.
60% of research articles which you read about eggs have been sponsored by someone who's benefiting from the egg industry. Just imagine that. That's a huge number. That's crazy.
But again, like, if your hypothesis is that eggs are bad in all cases, then one case study of someone who was eating 25 or 30 eggs per day for years and years and years and years, who seemed to be doing fine in his 80s, and that case study I'll put on the screen now, that case study disproves your hypothesis because of the power of negative evidence. Make sense? So anyway, yeah, okay, all the research is flawed. I completely agree with it. So do we throw it all out the window, or do we use it the best we can, or do we largely ignore it and stick to first principles, which is my personal take, right? First principles being humans are going to thrive on the diet that they evolved to eat.
I was also listening to a YouTube video while preparing for this particular video, where I was listening to this doctor talking. He was a keto doctor talking pro eggs, and he said that your body makes about 3,000 mg of cholesterol. What is another 300 mg going to do anyways? And this was like, even if you're going to talk for egg, why would you put it up like that? It's like saying you already smoked 2 packets of cigarettes.
No, it's not. Sorry, this is an endogenous. The body does not make nicotine. The body does not make tobacco, right? So you can't. The body does make things like vitamin D, right? So you can say, look, my body is making whatever, I don't know, the 15,000 international units of vitamin D a day. Why should I supplement an additional 5,000 international units? That would be a one-to-one comparison. But, the body doesn't make its own cigarettes, right? It's only people who are in a completely different universe who think that the cigarette analogy has any bearing on this discussion.
Day, why? What would another half a pack do anyways? It's going to do harm. It's not good for you. Cholesterol is not good for you.
Cholesterol, if you didn't have cholesterol, you would not be here, lady. Like, it would not be possible. Cholesterol is in every cell of your body, right? It's essential for life.
Cholesterol coming from eggs is not good for you. Plus, the 3000 mg of cholesterol which is produced by the body, that reacts differently from dietary cholesterol.
How is a molecule of cholesterol produced by the liver different than a molecule of cholesterol in an egg? How?
Dietary cholesterol is not good for you.
Nonsense. Where's the evidence for that?
What it does, cholesterol is like this waxy kind of substance, so basically what it does is it's like sort of forms an internal layer inside your arteries and veins.
So now she's talking complete nonsense. What is the evidence for any of this? Right?
Which interfere with the blood flow. It
What? No, I don't even know what she's referring to.
interferes with glucose, glucose.
Yeah, she's laughing because she has no clue what she's talking about. She's just making stuff up at this point.
It interferes with glucose absorption. It causes insulin resistance, leading to diabetes. It leads to heart attacks, hypertension, multiple other problems.
This is complete nonsense, right? So how can we prove it's complete nonsense? Because we have people who are reversing their heart disease with ketogenic diets, for example, and with high cholesterol levels, right? So, and there's lots of evidence for that by this point. So again, if you have a hypothesis, this lady has a hypothesis that eggs are not good to eat. If I just provide you one case study of someone who's improved their heart disease while eating a lot of eggs, that's enough to at least disprove it as a universal. If you have a more nuanced hypothesis that maybe some people should reduce their intake of eggs for some reasons, then we can discuss it. But the way she's putting forward her hypothesis, it's very silly.
Don't want to eat food which is high in cholesterol. Eggs have a lot of cholesterol. They also have a lot of saturated fats. Your per day intake of saturated fats, as per American Dietetic Association.
No one should listen to anything coming out of the American Dietetic Association. Those people are bought and paid for, right? If you're going to dismiss the egg studies, you better be dismissing the ADA, right?
Any big giant, the people who decide what goes on your plate, anyone's going to tell you that you don't take more than 4 to 5 or like 5 to 6% of your daily calories coming in from saturated fats.
So if you believe that, then you shouldn't, then even olive oil is not a healthy food, right? Because olive oil is, 14, 15% saturated fat. So the position is a little weird, right?
5 to 6% is the maximum limit. Only 1 to 2 servings of eggs have that much. That's your maximum limit.
So if you're talking about percentage, then, you have to look at the denominator, like how many calories, quote unquote calories, they're not calories. How much food is the person eating? So if someone is, a big guy, 150 kilos or something, very tall guy, then 1 or 2 eggs is not that limit, right? So just pointing out the inconsistency in the way she's putting this. If it's a percentage, then it depends on the denominator. It depends how many quote unquote calories, how much food you're eating in the day too.
You don't take more than that, but only like for breakfast, you might be taking that much. And then throughout the day, you're taking much more. This is the second reason to avoid eggs. Number 3, it's called the perfect protein. What is this perfect protein? Like, honestly, just think about it. What do you mean by perfect protein?
So I don't know. For me, eggs are not a perfect protein. For me, a perfect protein would be something like beef, to be perfectly honest. But eggs are certainly up there, right? And so when we look at any kind of these dietary indices for how proteins are digested, we find that eggs contain all the essential amino acids and contain them in a very digestible form. That's why eggs do very well on PDCAS, DIAS indices and so on. So, perfection is a weird concept in general, and I don't really agree with anything being a perfect anything. Eggs are certainly a very good source of protein. Egg whites in particular are a very good source of protein. I don't think anyone disputes that.
And the first thing I'm sure coming up to most of your minds is it probably contains all amino acids, because you read this somewhere that you should consume all amino acids. That's not true. Perfect protein is...
So you're saying it's not true that we have to consume all essential amino acids? Because if that's what you're saying, then you're completely full of nonsense, right?
Honestly, if you had to pick...
So the definition of an essential amino acid, so there are 20 amino acids. Actually, there are hundreds of amino acids I found out in my research, but the 20 amino acids that are in the human body. Of those 20, there are 11 that we can make, that are considered non-essential because we can make them inside the body. 9 we cannot. So we have to get it from diet. There's no way around it, right? Now, all of those 9 are also available in plant foods, in her defense. But if you have a food that has all of them in a very good proportion, why not eat that food, right?
pick one protein to be a perfect protein. Now, proteins are made of something called amino acids. Okay. The more chain of amino acids a food has, it's said to be better in protein content. There are technically 20 amino acids.
Again, there are technically hundreds of amino acids, 20 of which are in the human body.
11 of which your body itself makes. So
of those 11, there are also some which are now being considered, as research is getting deeper in this topic, there are some that are considered to be conditionally essential, meaning that yes, you can make it under certain circumstances, but it would be better to get it from the diet, right? So essential, conditionally essential, and maybe less needed.
You don't have to get it from out. For the remaining 9, foods which have the most concentration is said to have the perfect protein. But among 9, one of the most important one is arginine. The reason arginine is important is because arginine sort of triggers your body's natural fat burning mechanism.
This is not this is so there are studies showing that in diets that are higher in arginine are associated with more fat burning. Is it arginine that's doing that? I don't think we can say that definitively. And also, there are many different ways to quote unquote burn fat. It's not burning fat. To reduce the fat on your body, there are many different ways. Increased consumption of certain amino acids may be one such way.
Triggers the release of an hormone called AMPK, and AMPK helps your body burn more fat at rest. So ideally, without burning muscle mass, this does not affect muscle mass, but it keeps your body fat percentage low, which is most important to you. Ideally, arginine should be the most perfect protein, but why is...
No, sorry. Arginine is just one amino acid, right? We need, as I said, 11, 13, 20. We need a lot more than one amino acid.
Eggs said to be the most perfect proteins. Eggs do have a good concentration of amino acids, but when you look at food, you don't look at food by itself. Eggs have no fiber.
Thank God eggs have no fiber. Fiber is not indicated for human consumption, right? Fiber, by definition, is just carbohydrate that you can't digest. That's what fiber is. So why should we be eating it?
Eggs have virtually very little or no nutrients and vitamins and minerals.
That is nonsense, right? So eggs, and I'll put a graphic up on the screen now, but eggs contain pretty much all of the essential micronutrients that we need. They don't contain them in enough quantities. That's why I recommend people to eat 5 or 6 or 7 eggs, right? So, but it does contain pretty much like a huge selection. In fact, egg yolks are one of the most nutrient-dense foods by many measures. So again, I don't think this person knows what she's talking about at all.
Minerals and none of those, no micronutrients. Eggs have just cholesterol, eggs have proteins, but to absorb proteins in the body, you need carbohydrates.
What? Where's the evidence for that? This is complete nonsense.
You need fiber.
You do not need fiber to absorb proteins in the body. That is complete nonsense.
You need microvitamins.
There are micronutrients in eggs, quite a lot of them, more than in plants.
You need micronutrients like vitamins and minerals. Without this...
But you don't, by the way, you don't need those things necessarily to digest things. You can give like pure proteins, whey proteins and so on, and people do digest them. So I don't know. I don't honestly know where she's getting this stuff. I've seen some of her other stuff, as I mentioned, a longer interview. I think she just makes stuff up. She doesn't actually have any understanding of science or data or how to understand the human body.
Proteins are not absorbed by the body. So if you look at a meal by itself, you'd rather be getting your proteins from different sources like beans and pulses and broccoli.
Why would you do that? Broccoli doesn't have protein to begin with, right? It has a negligible amount of protein, right? There's no reason to do that.
And different things where you're getting the protein, but you're also getting fiber.
Why would you want to get fiber? Why? What is the advantage? What is the advantage of taking in things that you cannot digest?
You're also getting micronutrients. You're also getting, minerals. You're getting so many other things besides just the protein content, because just the protein content is anyways not absorbed by the body. So it's not really the perfect.
Why? Why wouldn't proteins be absorbed by the body? You're not giving me any science here, any data.
Perfect protein. If anything, it's really bad for you because protein content in eggs is so concentrated and so high that it leads to tumors inside the body.
Okay, so that's complete nonsense. And it's also fear mongering, right? Tumors, people will see tumors, they'll think it means cancer, and they'll think, oh, eggs will give me cancer. It's complete nonsense, right? There's no evidence for that.
Which comes to our next point. IGF, or insulin-like growth factor, IGF-1. IGF-1 increases by the consumption of egg, increases really high. Now, IGF-1 has been associated with cancer. So
again, the word here is associated. So in the context, again, certain substrates, certain hormones, certain indicators can be associated with bad outcomes in a particular context, right? If you are a sugar burner, cancer feeds on two substrates. This is the work of Dr. Thomas Seyfried. Cancer feeds on glucose, on sugar, and cancer feeds on glutamine, which is an amino acid, right? Now, in the context of someone who's eating a high sugar diet, they are more likely to be feeding the tumors in their body. Everyone has tumors in their body, little microtumors or whatever, right? But if you feed them with a high glucose diet, in that context, it may be possible that IGF-1 is really bad and you don't want to turn it on, right? So in the context of a high sugar diet, maybe you want to avoid eggs. I don't know. But to me, the first thing you want to avoid is sugar itself, because sugar is what's feeding the cancers, right? So there's a lot of when you see the word associated in any of these vegan videos, your antenna should go up. There's no reason to be listening to someone who keeps citing associational data without even putting it on the screen, because I don't think she has the first idea what she's talking about, and saying that associational data proves that eggs are bad or whatever.
Give you an example how this works. If you have one cancer cell in the body, one single cell in the body which is bad, which is carcinogenic or cancerous, if you're going to put IGF to it, that one cell is going to multiply faster at a very fast pace into like multiple different types of cells. And you want to control the growth, not accelerate it. IGF accelerates the growth in the body. So the concentrated proteins in the eggs, which is known as ovalbumin, is not really perfect. It's high in
So I think she's referring to albumin, which is the egg white proteins in the egg whites.
Bioavailability, but bioavailability not necessarily translate to it's good for the body.
All this is context dependent. I'll give you that. But in the context of a normal human, like an average person from the population, there's no reason to think that consumption of egg whites is a bad thing or egg proteins is a bad thing. In fact, it seems to be a good thing. Especially as we age, we need higher amounts of protein and good quality proteins, like the proteins in eggs.
It's not good for the body. It's like telling you have cereals for breakfast.
Don't ever have cereals for breakfast. That is a huge mistake. You spike your glucose, you spike your blood sugar. You'll be dealing with dips all day long. Have proteins, have eggs for breakfast.
Every single day, because they're high in fiber.
Yeah, again, fiber. Why do we need fiber? Indigestible polysaccharides, indigestible carbohydrates. Don't eat them.
Correct. Your cereals might be high in fiber, but with fiber, they have like 7 to 8 cans worth of sugar.
Okay, so she's actually agreeing. So this is the first sensible thing she said all in this video. Don't have cereal for breakfast. Thank goodness.
So is it really worth having cereals which have fiber, but also have so much of sugar? Now, when you're having eggs in the name of proteins, you forget to take into account they have cholesterol, they have saturated fats, they have choline.
All these things are good for you. Cholesterol, saturated fat, choline. No evidence to say it's bad for you. Let me put it that way.
You have all these things which are causing you diseases.
The causing you diseases? Because a lot of us have healed our diseases with a lot of eggs.
In the name of proteins. But you could also get these proteins from somewhere else.
Many of us have tried to get our proteins from vegan sources and so on, trying to dial in a vegan diet, and it didn't work. It doesn't work for, I would say it's not even going to work for you in the long run. You seem to be very young. If I look at the people who in my vegan community in the 1990s, almost none of them, I think one of them might still be vegan. Even he wasn't vegan for a long time, but then he went back to being vegan. So I don't get this.
When I talk to someone, I'm saying, don't have cereals because I can help you get fiber through other sources without the sugar.
Don't take fiber. There's no reason to take fiber.
Why would you still continue having cereals? So why would you still continue having eggs in the name of perfect protein?
Because eggs, unlike cereals, are a traditional human food that humans have been eating for tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of years. And so there's no reason to think that it's bad based on any data that you presented here. Actually, I haven't presented any data here. Any opinion that you presented here is pretty much irrelevant when you consider, again, let me give you another example. So elephants have been eating, I don't know, certain kinds of grasses and sugar canes and trees, right? For as long as they've been around, for at least as long as the elephant has been around, probably for millions of years, right? If you suddenly say we're going to give this elephant some fiber powder or whatever it is, that may or may not be good for them. I don't know. But you're going to have to do a lot of veterinary research to prove it to me that it's good for it. Otherwise, I'll just give the elephant its traditional diet, excuse me. So in the case of humans, why are we different than any other animal system? The foods that we've been eating for millennia, by default, the assumption is those are the ones that are going to be good for us, unless you can show me some very good quality evidence that it's not. And nothing here qualifies.
When you can get the same protein content somewhere else without all these side effects.
There are no side effects. So again, speaking for myself now, when I transitioned to increasing my intake of eggs, when I forgot about all this bunkum about saturated fat and cholesterol and all on, and I ate eggs without fear, all of my symptoms went away, right?
And our last point, eggs have been associated with prostate cancer. How much? As little as 2.5 eggs per week.
So this is interesting. I'll look up the study. I guarantee you the associational. So again, she started this with association, and I guarantee the association doesn't hit the threshold that we would like to see to actually begin to posit anything like causation. The threshold we would like to see to begin to question whether or not there's causation is 2x. In other words, there should be a 100% increase. It should double the effect. If you have a group that are eating eggs, a group that aren't eating eggs, we should see an effect size of 100%, meaning, again, an RR of 2i, risk ratio of 2.0. Okay? I guarantee you, whatever data she's citing is not going to hit that threshold, right? And by the way, even if it did, that would only be necessary to actually formulate a lab experiment, formulate an actual RCT, randomized controlled trial, right? Until the association goes up to like 6 or 8, which is 600%, 800%, you're not going to, you're not going to think that it's likely causation. At a risk factor of 600%, you say, okay, that now we begin to think that's likely causation. But at a risk factor of only 200%, in other words, doubling the chance, we would say, well, might be causal, might not. You have to prove it. And anyway, I don't think the data she's citing is going to be anywhere near a 2.0 RR.
As little as 2.5 eggs per week. I'm going to repeat this because it's so shocking. Can increase your risk for prostate cancer by up to 7-fold, 7 times more risk to prostate cancer. And this is again to do with.
It's not risk. Risk is a, think of Russian roulette. Risk is a statement of actual causation, right? So it's not risk, it's an association. And I guarantee you, so the 7-fold, how do you get 7-fold? Without looking at the data, because I'll put any data up in the post in edit, right? But without looking at any data, how do they get the 7-fold increase? So they'll take two groups of people, one that is eating the eggs, one that isn't, right? And the group of the eggs might have, out of a massive group of them, maybe very small number, 1.2% of them maybe got prostate cancer, right? 1.2%, or 0. Actually, with prostate cancer, it's more likely like, I don't know, 0.8% of them got prostate cancer, something less than 1%. Now, in the group that didn't eat the eggs, they'll see something like 0.5% of them, maybe. Anyway, these are really, really tiny numbers. But when you take the relative risk, when you take the difference between the two groups and express it as 0.2 versus 0.6% or whatever, if you just had there's a difference of 0.4% between those two groups, no one would take it seriously because that's such a small number, right? But if you say now it's a 3-fold increase or a 7-fold increase, 0.2% to 1.2% or whatever, now it becomes, oh my goodness, that's huge, right? But when you actually look at the methodology, look at the data, you look at the associations, you find out, okay, there's nothing to see here. Again and again and again, vegan study after vegan study, this is what we see.
Insulin like growth factor, previous points, IGF-1, because if you have one cancer cells and you continue, like putting fuel to fire, if you continue.
Fuel on the fire of cancer cells is glucose, is sugar, is carbohydrates, right? And glutamine. But you can't do all that much about glutamine, except maybe fasting may be indicated just as a prevention strategy. But you can avoid carbohydrates like the plague, and that will reduce your chances of developing cancer a lot more than worrying about IGF-1. And we know this from many, many data sets.
Giving yourself more and more IGF-1 through food sources like eggs and also dairy, then that increases your risk of cancer. So
when she's throwing in random stuff like dairy in there, it's like, why are you throwing in that random stuff? You made an entire video about eggs. We're at 9.5 minutes on a 10-minute video about eggs, and you throw in dairy. All the associational data on dairy shows that dairy corresponds. So just like eggs may correspond to worse outcomes, dairy corresponds to better outcomes. In other words, there's an inverse correlation between dairy and bad outcomes. The more dairy you have, the fewer bad outcomes you have at a population level, right? So again, correlation doesn't prove anything, but using the same methodologies that she likes to cite, dairy seems to be quote unquote healthy, right?
Think about it. I mean, you're trying to get these proteins and you're trying to get all these benefits in the name of health, but you're also, opening up, you're also risking yourself for so many diseases. And I don't think it's a wise choice to get your proteins from eggs when you could very well get it from other sources without all the side.
So yeah, I'm going to stop it there because she's just repeating herself and summing up now. Listen, what can we say about this video? First of all, this person is making a statement. She's giving opinions without any freaking data, without anything. Even the studies that she's citing, I have to look them up later. She hasn't put links or anything like that. So that's, I mean, for me, I would just dismiss this out of hand. I wouldn't pay this person any attention, even the slightest, right? Because there's no data to back up what she's saying. She's not even citing where I can look for the data. I have to do a research project. Number two, she doesn't seem to know about the topic she's talking about. Eggs contain vitamin A. Eggs contain, choline is actually a beneficial nutrient. Eggs also contain, I think, small amounts of vitamin D, vitamin B, some of the B vitamins, et cetera, right? So to say that eggs are devoid of micronutrients, it just shows that you haven't even done a Google search here. You haven't even checked out what's going on, right? Number three, so again, my default hypothesis in all of this is that the foods that humans evolved to eat, or the dietary patterns even that humans evolved to eat, and there may be more than one, I fully concede that, but those are going to be the healthiest for humans even today. That's my default assumption, unless someone can prove that I'm wrong with a hell of a lot of data. She's given nothing in this to even challenge that assumption. She doesn't seem to understand that eggs are a food that humans have been eating for, again, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of years. And therefore, without really, really, really strong evidence, much better evidence than what she cited here, we have no reason to avoid eggs, to exclude them from the diet, right? And lastly, again, this would fall under the category of anecdotal evidence, but I mean, we have those case studies of people who are eating 25 eggs a day and thriving, right? Many of us in our own lives have increased our consumption of eggs. I used to be vegan, and then I was vegetarian. And when I was vegetarian, I was very concerned about some of the issues that she raised because I was ignorant. And so I was avoiding eggs like the plague. I wasn't eating very many of them. And I started to develop many illnesses, vitamin A deficiency, eyesight started to go, et cetera, et cetera. And how did I fix all that? I mean, I greatly increased my intake of eggs. And did I experience any negative feedback, any negative results? No, only positives, right? So much so that I began looking into this nutrition thing in a much more deep way, and I found out that everything that the vegans say is complete nonsense, right? Demonstrably so, including on the moral and ethical stuff, by the way, which I can get to in a future vid. So with that, thanks, and I'll see you in the next one.